Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Educate, enlighten, and entertain. And today, on this episode of Lest We Forget Historical, we are going to discuss the UN news about their agencies making a recommitment to Afghanistan's women and girls after the Taliban takeover after 1 year. Their headline reads, "A year of Taliban rule in Afghanistan has led to a deterioration in the lives of women and girls, affecting all aspects of the human rights," 3 UN agencies reported. And they go on to say, quote, "It's been a year of increasing disrespect for their right to live free and equal lives, denying them the opportunity to livelihoods, access to health care and education, and escape from situations of, my word, extreme violence," said Sama Bahu, executive director at the UN Women. And she also goes on to say that what's happening over in Afghanistan should start ringing an alarm bell for the rest of us, especially with the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, and his Vice President Pence, because they are quite similar in what they believe of women. And trust me, ladies and girls, we are not equal to men. What is happening in Afghanistan shows how decades of progress on gender equality and women's rights can be wiped out in months. And Trump and Vance have 4 years. The fight for women's rights in Afghanistan is a global fight and a battle for women's rights everywhere. So don't rest on your laurels. Ms. Bauhaus, Bahous, outlined how the Taliban's meticulously constructed policies of inequality have set Afghanistan apart from the rest of the international community, wiping out decades of progress on gender equality and women's rights in mere months. It is the only country in the world where girls are barred from going to high school and effectively barred from political participation, as the Taliban has an all-male cabinet and there is no Ministry of Women's Affairs. And that's what happens when you mix religion with politics. A clear indication that things are going to go downhill from there. Afghan women are mostly restricted from working outside of the home. They must cover their faces in public, and they must be accompanied by a male chaperone when they travel. In addition, they continue to be subjected to multiple forms of gender-based violence. They don't treat their little boys by whipping the soles of their feet or putting them to death. Listen, when a potential Republican candidate tells you it should be against the law that you are not allowed to speak against it to the Supreme Court, that's just the first step of losing your basic human rights. This is a deliberate slew of measures of discrimination against Afghanistan's women and girls, but it's also a terrible act of self-sabotage for a country experiencing huge challenges, including climate-related and natural disaster, to exposure to economic headwinds that leave some 25 million Afghan people in poverty, and many of them hungry. She should visit the United States. We're having the same problem. But the women here are equally impoverished. There are a lot of men, too, that experience poverty, but not on the scale that us women with children. Soaring food and fuel prices, worsened by a drought and the war in the Ukraine, mean that roughly 95% of the population in nearly all female-headed households do not get enough to eat. Don't forget those commercials on your television, laptop, tablet, phone about the starving women who went through the concentration camps during World War II because they were Jewish. And Putin doesn't give a flying fudge about those people. He could care less. And yet they have the nerve to say that communism is a better political and economic reform than anything that the czars had. I would like to argue with Mr. Putin about it, but I'm pretty sure since he considers me beneath his dignity and notice, that will never happen. Ms. Kanem, Kanem, said, keeping girls at a secondary school not only violates their right to education and prevents them from realizing their full potential, it also puts them at an increased risk of early marriage, what we call rape, early pregnancy, which they call abortion, violence, and abuse, which has been going on for centuries. The breakdown of the health system has compromised women and girls' access to reproductive health services. Donald Trump, no abortion. So if you miscarry, it's permissible to let a woman die out in the parking lot, bleeding to death. I wonder if they'll get combat pay. They're giving their life for their country. And including maternal health care, particularly for more than 9 million people living in remote areas of the country. For an estimated 24,000 women who give birth each month in hard-to-reach areas, childbirth can, in effect, be a death sentence. Well, same thing is true here in the United States. We're wealthier, and so far we still have some basic human rights. Afghan was already struggling with education even before the Taliban took over last August, as more than 4 million children were already out of school because 60% of them were girls. Barring girls from attending school also has a monetary cost, according to a new analysis by the UN Children's Fund. It shows that the country loses 2.5% of its annual gross domestic product because of that decision. UNICEF also said that the Afghan economy would gain at least $5.4 billion if the cohort of 3 million girls were to complete secondary school and join the workforce. Yes, well, they don't want to discuss that either. The estimates do not take into account the non-financial impacts of denying girls access to education, which include future shortages of women teachers, doctors, and nurses, as well as increasing health costs related to adolescent pregnancy. Broader benefits of education are also excluded, such as overall educational attainment, reduced child marriage, and reduced infant mortality. Yeah, they'll just blame it on the women, right? The analysis also indicates that Afghanistan will be unable to regain the GDP lost during the transition and reach its true potential productivity without fulfilling girls' rights to access and complete secondary school education. The decision on March 23rd not to allow girls back to secondary school was shocking and disappointing, said Dr. Mohammed Ayoa, the UNICEF representative in Afghanistan. UNICEF wants to see every girl and boy across Afghanistan in school and learning. We will not stop advocating until that goal is achieved. Not only is education a right for every child, it is the foundation for their future growth in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, if a man doesn't want to believe something, he won't. They're very, well, the polite method would be stubborn that way. But I would say it's vain and arrogant on their part. The United Nations has repeatedly stressed its commitment to continue delivering in Afghanistan and advocating for women and girls there. Ms. Bauhaus, the UN Woman Chief, underlined how excluding women from all aspects of life robs the population of half its talents and energies. And she urged the de facto authorities to open schools for all girls, remove constraints on women's employment and participation in politics, and revoke all decisions and policy that strip women of their rights. Quote, without the full participation of women and girls in all aspects of public life, there's little chance of achieving lasting peace, stability, and economic development. Meanwhile, her agency is scaling up the provision of life-saving services for women by women to meet the overwhelming needs while also supporting women-led business and employment opportunities across all sectors. 1 year on, with women's visibility so diminished and rights so severely impacted, it is vital to direct targeted, substantial, and systematic funding to address and reverse this situation and to facilitate women's meaningful participation and all stakeholder engagement on Afghanistan, including in delegations that meet with the Taliban's officials. She said, "Does this remind you of a book that was written in the United States in the future where all women were either childbearing or they were left to die while competing with food with the children?" Makes you wonder, because the United States certainly can head off in that direction. The UNFPA has stepped up its presence across Afghanistan and is working with national partners to scale up provision of sexual and reproductive health services, again, for women by women, including in remote areas. The agency reached more than 4.3 million people over the past year and distributed essential medicines and supplies to hospitals, as well as menstrual hygiene supplies to countless women and girls. Ms. Kainer added that as winter approaches amid rising needs, the UNFPA are already providing cooking utensils and blankets to desperate people and stands ready to do more. And she quote, as the world faces multiple overlapping crises, we must not forget the women and girls of Afghanistan. When women's and girls' basic rights are denied, we are all diminished. We must work together, united in our common and firm belief that there can be no durable peace, recovery, or stability for Afghanistan unless women's and girls' basic human rights are given to education, to participate in public life, and to access services vital to their health, dignity, and well-being. They're respected and protected. If you want to hear more information about what's happening in these Middle East countries and religion and the restrictions placed on women and girls, please let us know at PWR Network LLC at gmail.com and let us know. Or if you have recently visited there, or your husband was there, or your wife was there fighting several years ago, we would love to have them on the show to tell us about their experiences in Afghanistan and to hear with our own ears what they have to say, because it can also happen in the United States. It can happen in Germany. In fact, it did when Hitler instituted the fact that he wanted more babies with blonde hair and blue eyes, what he termed the superhuman race. And Donald Trump has expressed the same dissatisfaction between girls of childbearing age that put them at 14 and 15, all the way up to 40 to have children. He thinks that will make up for the lack of deporting all the millions of immigrants. Well, time will tell. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Remember, you can see this Lest We Forget Historical all over again at our website, https:// passionatworldtalkradio.com. Scroll down to State of Current Affairs, click on it. It will take you to a Google link. Click on that, and it will take you into the belly of the YouTube beast. You can also listen to the audio on our blog. This program is sponsored by 3 companies, myflex.com. Go check it out. Ruby.ai, an all-in-one smorgasbord of everything you need to be successful in your business, personal, and spiritual life with Ruby AI. http:// with Lillian, LILLIAN.com. Also brought to you by the podcast Obstacle Training Course, 2-month program, an hour, Monday through Friday. Learn how to podcast, align podcasting with your work, align it with your educational pursuits. Anyone can podcast, but it's more than just speaking into a microphone. https://educate.passionateworldtalkradio.com/masterclass. And you want to write a memoir? Your member? Of course you do, because you have something to say of how you got from A to B and B to C. Or you were a single parent and you raised your kids. Or you were a widow or a widower and you raised your kids. Or you've done something so out of this world that the rest of the world is panting to hear what you have to say. Contact us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com and let us know. And what is your call to action? Christmas is coming. The goose is getting fat. Please put $5 in PWTRN's donation hat. You want to keep on hearing these programs? Well, just like everybody else, we need a little help from time to time. And your financial help will make sure that the topics and the podcasts we explore, you'll get the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So helps you to passionatworldtalkradio.com. Educate, enlighten, entertain. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great weekend.